This is the story of the Pont-Saint-Esprit mass poisoning. Among the darkest chapters in the history of mass hysteria events, one that undoubtedly stands out for its sordid and tragic nature is that of a small town in southern France called Pont-Saint-Esprit. Deaths, hallucinations, suicides. August 15, 1951, will forever be etched in the annals of the most puzzling cases of food poisoning. Or was it something more? You, dear listener, will be the one to decide. It was the post-war era then, and the French government had decided to control the grain market. This, it was believed, would always ensure strategic management of an essential food source, and such a government monopoly was not necessarily viewed unfavorably by the population. But this practice left the French nation's bakers at the mercy of the government in terms of the quality of the flour they received for making their bread. Weeks earlier, several villages near Pont-Saint-Esprit had reported cases of quote-unquote bread poisoning. But despite that, nothing seemed to have indicated that in a few days, much more severe cases than those in those villages would occur. A truck driver responsible for flour deliveries in the area, Jean Bousquet, was alerted that his flour shipments had a grayish hue and, in some cases, even arrived with worms. In a matter of hours, by August 16th, several cases of horrific poisoning, presumably from eating contaminated bread, began to flood the clinics and hospitals of Pont-Saint-Esprit. Severe symptoms were already evident in more than 100 people. Nothing, absolutely nothing, improved the situation. Soon, mass hallucinations began. On the night of August 24th, a man, believing he was on an airplane, leaped from a second-floor window. An 11-year-old boy attempted to strangle his mother. The mailman, Léon Armounier, vividly recalls how snakes and fire surrounded him, making him feel smaller and smaller. Meanwhile, others committed suicide, were killed, or gravely injured. Some ended up in psychiatric hospitals. Apparently, all acute cases had something in common: ingestion of bread from the Briand bakery. Mr. Briand, the owner, denied using any rye flour, which was a common practice back then due to the frequent shortage of wheat. This should have minimized the risk of ergotism. The official story, however, turned out to be bread contamination through a microorganism called Claviceps purpurea. Several scientific researchers, such as Drs. Stanley Finger, Jeffrey Pomerville, and Frederick Berwick, concur with the conclusion reached by local authorities. But, dear listener, let us revisit the history of certain ergot-related alkaloids. In 1938, Albert Hofmann isolated lysergic acid, better known as LSD, for the first time, and he did so precisely from, yes, you guessed it, from the microorganism responsible for ergotism. In 1950, the CIA, under the direction of General Walter Bedell Smith, initiated a series of experiments known as Project Artichoke, involving the use of LSD and other alkaloids to investigate whether it was possible to compel someone to murder against their will. In the pursuit of amnesiac assassins and truth serums, a large number of subjects were unknowingly administered these experimental drugs. These experiments, which resulted in the funding of over 100 related projects, are considered extremely illegal and immoral by contemporary standards. They were discontinued in 1973, and shortly after that, a significant portion of its classified records was destroyed. The broad initiative, historically known today as MK-Ultra, was subject to congressional inquiries, and the fraction of documents that survived the destruction of evidence was declassified in 2001. Perhaps the full extent of the atrocities committed from the days of Project Artichoke until the end of MK Ultra will never be fully known. But that's not all. In 2009, the journalist Hank Albarelli discovered among the documents that survived the intentional destruction of records a memorandum titled Pont-Saint-Esprit and Frank Olson, which stated that all documentation related to the France operation should be promptly made to disappear. Albarelli revealed that the report to which this memorandum referred had been issued almost 2 years before the horrors of Pont-Saint-Esprit and originated from the Edgewood Arsenal, where many experiments involving LSD were conducted. And you see, by a remarkable coincidence, Sandoz Chemicals, which was then producing LSD in Switzerland, is mentioned in another report dated 1954, also uncovered by Albarelli thanks to the Freedom of Information Act. In it, a conversation between a CIA agent and a Sandoz representative is cited. While intoxicated, the Sandoz gentleman confided that the Pont-Saint-Esprit mass hysteria had absolutely nothing to do with the bread. So, dear listener, draw your conclusions. The universe is replete with strange coincidences, and some undoubtedly lead to tragic endings. But some of the darkest conclusions you and I already know remain forever buried in the dungeons of science.